founder of Wild China, thanks very much for being on Danwei TV.
Thank you for having me.
Pleasure. Can I first ask you to introduce your company and what it does?
Sure. My company, as you just mentioned, Wild China, I started it purely with the extension to help travelers experience China differently. Now let me define what that means. It is a sustainable luxury travel. What it does is it breaks away from the typical stereotype of traveling China. Beijing, Xi'an, Yangtze Cruise, and Shanghai. To me, China is so much broader than that, and culturally much more diverse than what those cities represent. And also more interestingly, local cuisine, local people, meeting the Chinese people in various parts of China really allow you to understand the opportunities and challenges of China today. But typical China tour services do not provide that.
So where do you take your guests?
We take our guests to, well, Beijing, Xi'an. Obviously you have to touch those places because that is the symbols of China. So we still visit those places, but we take a different angle to see those places. For example, in Beijing, much of the focus is in the hutongs, in places like this, undiscovered local temple. For example, Zhihua Si in Beijing, we visit Zhihua Si, and we also take a hike along the Great Wall and descend into one of the farmhouses. So you get to see the Great Wall in people's lives today, rather than just going to Badaling and look at other millions of tourist crowds. But that's the major cities. More interestingly, we cover some of the very unknown or lesser known parts of China. My hometown, for example, Yunnan, is probably my favorite place to go. It's way down in the southwest of China. Borders Myanmar to the west, Tibet to the northwest, Laos to the south. So it's very much a sort of a mix of Southeast Asian and China and Chinese culture and Tibetan culture sort of all together in that corner. When our travelers go there, often you will find buffalo still plowing the rice paddies. Sort of very typical traditional Chinese agrarian lifestyle, which provides much contrast to factories around Shanghai.
So when you go to these places, how does your tourism activity there affect the locals economically? Do they make money because of you, and how do you make the balance between making money and ruining the place by making it too commercial?
It's a very good question. It's always probably the most difficult thing in tourism. I have always been a strong believer of for-profit enterprises, because I believe when there is a for-profit motive, to a reasonable degree, then it's sustainable. Whenever you go to a rural area, if you can convince the villagers that by sharing with you what their traditional handicrafts, the process of sewing and embroidery, and they are compensated in a way, they're more likely to keep doing what they do. But I do not want to turn it into anything commercial, obviously. So very much we have certain places that we've developed a working relationship with the villages, that we've negotiated a fair trade type of compensation. Say we employ the guides, or we employ the villagers to help with our hiking trip, for example. They benefit from it economically, and therefore they know if they provide better service, there will be more tipping. It's a very sort of straightforward incentive. Yet at the same time, we work with them to say, you do not want to turn this into a factory. You do not want to drive a bus to your village every day, because you ruin a place completely. And they understand a more in-depth type of experience. Taking our clients walking through the mountains for 5 days, I think they make more money than hosting a busload of tourists. So yes, they do benefit from it. But also, a lot of the time, we want to encourage our clients to have a spontaneous experience when traveling to China. For example, say Shanghai. You see a lot of kids running in the street or going home with their parents from preschools. Our clients would be curious and say, well, what are the preschool conditions like? One of our guides, well, most of our guides are encouraged to say, well, maybe I have a child, or my sister has a child that is in certain preschool, that's convenient. Let me see if I can take you into the school. So the very spontaneous activities allow them to see the real China. Those obviously those have no economic reasons behind, but just providing a more authentic, this is how I treat my friend, therefore I would like to treat my guests the same way. And
no, I guess you must travel a lot around China when you're researching a new destination or that kind of thing. What kinds of environmental problems do you see in the areas that...
I think there are two aspects of that. One is from the travelers themselves. A lot of travelers go to places in large crowds, and honestly it's a process of education. They have not really, some of them, they're coming a long way, but some of them do realize that you should not be really talking so loudly. You probably shouldn't be smoking everywhere you go, because the tourist crowds themselves create sound problems. When I say this, particularly, is one of the hiking trails when we have a birding trip in one of the most remote parts of China, and the birds are incredible. This is the Goldkorn Mountains. It's one of the premier birding sites in China, and there was a whole crowd of tourists from Kunming. They have learned that they are not supposed to trash things around. Okay, carrying trash out, which is already a great improvement. But the sound noises, they chase all the bad birds away, they scare the birds away. I mean, this is one of the things. I think from the local service providers or local villagers, education again is an issue. Providing travel services, they know the most important thing is to create a very comfortable place for our guests to stay, or provide the best service they can. Say, for example, on a trail, they will carry all the food and supplies for you. But when you're done with the cooking or the eating, there are certain trash left over from packaging of food, etc. The local villagers would just say, let's burn them. This is their way of getting rid of trash. But if you end up burning all of that, what happens to the air? And so we have to educate our service team. No, you can't. You have to pack in and pack out everything possible. And this is a very slow, gradual process. And I think actually Chinese government has done a great job in educating the masses. For example, a lot of places you go, there are 2 different trash cans, one for normal trash, the other one for recycling.
But nobody actually...
But nobody uses that.
Yeah,
That's
I know, because I look in the trash can and it's the same stuff in both. So,
right. So I think it's a matter of time and education. You first provide the 2 separate things, and then you have to really drill the message clear through. What do you expect people to do?
What about like things that are not directly related to tourism? Like, I mean, when I walk in the mountains around Beijing, the thing I've noticed that seems to be the biggest threat against the natural environment is sort of wildcat quarries. Not actual mining, I don't think, but where people are digging out the side of the mountain to get either some kind of rocks or sand. Do you see that kind of thing, in the forest in Yunnan? And how serious a problem is that kind of low-grade attack on the environment that's going on in kind of many parts of the countryside?
That is one of the sort of, I think that's a much bigger issue, much bigger threat to the environment. One of the examples was just my recent trip to Zhongdian, Shangri-La. We drove from Shangri-La, Old Town, all the way, just 80 kilometers out through up this mountain. Incredibly beautiful rhododendron forests, flowers blooming, and glacier mountains in the distance. The kind of dream scenery you could ever imagine. There's a stream on the side gushing down the mountain, and I looked at the water and I said, it doesn't look exactly crystal clear. It looks a little bit green. So, but I didn't know what was driving that. And then we kept driving. Another hour later, the speed was very slow. So 80 kilometers took us 5 hours, back and forth, to and back. So an hour later, we came to this vast reservoir type of thing. It's a what they call in Chinese Wei Kuang. It's basically the leftover of a mining operation. It's big, in the mountains, tucked away. Nobody saw it from outside. I never expected to see that. And on the side of the mountain, there are obvious signs of excavation, mining, holes dug into the mountains, or the face of the mountain being chopped off. There are a lot of those. And but that valley itself generated the first richest person of Shangri-La, the first and the wealthiest person.
Because of the mine.
Because of the mine.
Right.
So it's not something that I think tourism can really somehow compete against. That has to be regulated from the government side, and I think the government is taking measures. But in China today, the pressure to develop versus the pressure to conserve, somehow there is a feeling of conservation can wait.
Right.
The truth is, no, you can't.
Yeah, there won't be anything left to conserve.
Because the cost of fixing that place would be much higher.
Okay. Well, then one last question. What about sort of the cultural heritage of the places that you take west to? You know, you go to a lot of areas where there are minorities, but I mean, even when talking about Han Chinese, every place just about all over the country has its own folk traditions.
Yes.
How do you see those, the continuing of some of this sort of intangible cultural heritage of China? Do you think the traditional cultures are going to be preserved, or are they dying on certain onslaught of modernity?
No, I'm optimistic on that. I think tourism actually is contributing to somehow revive these traditional cultures. I'll give you some examples. Again, back to in Yunnan, for example, traditional tea making on the tea and horse caravan trail up to Tibet. Traditional tea making is something, you know, traditionally it was just sold in bulk and packaged pretty poorly with just wrapped in paper and made into a brick, carried on horseback into Tibet. Because tourists are coming, the local township, the village, they are all looking around, digging through their sort of list of our local treasures and say, hey, traditional tea making is one of the things that could attract tourists. Or traditional bronze casting in certain Shangri-La area is again a way to make souvenirs that will sell to tourists. Initially, these traditional cultures, traditional ways of making crafts, turned into these very kitschy, cheap trinkets that nobody wanted to buy. But then one person somewhere along the way would come up and say, wait a second, maybe we can package this traditional form of art or this traditional tea in a tasteful way. Then this person succeeds and finds the customer, and all the others say, what was the recipe of success again? Taking the traditional elements, yet tastefully add to it.
But how much of it is tasteful? I mean,
right now, not a whole lot.
Zhongdian, I mean, I find it pretty, distasteful or untasteful that they renamed it to Shangri-La. It's kind of like Disneyfication, isn't it? I mean, do you see people are starting to sort of appreciate the subtleties rather than the sort of slap in your face kind of packaging?
No, I think travelers are getting more and more sophisticated by the day, and so are the travel service providers. And the peripheral travel service providers, like, you know, the packaging of the show or the packaging of the tourist souvenir. For example, there's the Mountain Heritage Foundation. Do you know some of them? In Zhongdian. They've been working with the local Tibetans to say, okay, local handicrafts, we can't just have the plastic pressed together to make a keychain with printed on a Shangri-La or with a mountain drawing printed on it and expect to sell. No, let's look at our local produce, maybe local yak felt. Is there a way we can cut and sew this nicely to make into a keychain that will be popular to travelers, and we can train some local crafts, women, men, to do these handwork, which existed over the year, in the past. And so they found a market to continue that and better the craftsmanship. There are more and more things like this. So I'm optimistic. Right now, probably 95% or 90% are not really things you want to take home and put on your, fireplace. But over time, it's just
getting there.
Yes.
So, what are your plans for the future? Anything exciting happening in the coming months?
Yes, indeed. In fact, we're looking for various ways to expand the Wild China brand in the sophisticated China travel sphere. One of the reasons I went down to Zhongdian was there's a Tibetan entrepreneur called Bai Ma Zhuoji. I don't know if you've stayed at his place. He already built a hotel called Songzang Retreat, Songzang Lodge. And he's extended that concept along the way further up to Deqing and forming a circuit loop back all the way to Zhongdian. They are still in the final stages of construction, but we are forming a joint venture so that we could create a 7-day circuit, a Wild China Songzang circuit. And experiences would be great because the location of the hotel, for example, the one in Deqing, you have the Meili Snow Mountain right in front of you, unobstructed. Further down in Tacheng, you can go see the Yunnan Stumpers monkeys with the rangers, not circled together in a zoo, with the rangers go explore. And in front of the guest house there, a large area of rice paddies because it's lower elevation, so you could see traditional ways of farming, etc. That's one of the things that's very exciting. Another one's we started working with Goldkorn Nature Reserve to produce a birding guide for all of the Three Rivers area.
Oh, wow.
So I'm very excited about that because there are hundreds of species of birds out there, and it's really the birding mecca in China.
When's that going to come out?
It probably will take a year. Probably will take a year.
Yeah, I know. I find it quite annoying because I have a bird book for the whole of China that I use in northern China. And there's only, there are not that many bird species in northern China.
Yeah.
But the book is this thick because of all the variety, particularly in Yunnan. So,
yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, so I'd love to actually take a look at that. The one you have is in English.
Yeah, it was published in England.
Yeah, in England.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we're creating one with the nature reserve and with one of the most well-respected birding ornithologists.
Have you got an illustrator?
Not yet. Do you have someone you recommend?
Well, funny enough, this is not for the video. The friend, the ex-wife of a friend of mine, I discovered after I bought the book, was the illustrator for that book.
Oh.
And I'm sure she already has all the illustrations. It may even be possible just to license them instead of having to do it from scratch. It's an international standard bird book, so.
Okay. If you can put me in contact, I'm looking for various help to push this up to the international level.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Did you know? Did Alex tell you we also just launched a whole series of Wild China Touch iPhone applications?
No.
For travel?
No.
No, we have one for Shanghai Expo.
Oh, okay.
We have one for I think the Lama Temple.
Like guides, sort of guides?
Yes,
oh, wow.
actual site guide.
Okay.
Site guide.
Is that, and are you giving those away for free as promotion, or is it?
No,
it's you're charging for them.
We were charging for them. It's serious content that was poured over again and again. And
how much are you charging per hour?
I think some of them. The one for Shanghai Expo is probably $199, and some of the others maybe a bit more.
Oh wow, interesting.
Yeah. Wild China Touch.
Okay, I'll look out for it.
So,
anything else?
That's pretty much it for now. There are some others that are in early stages.
Zhang Mei, founder of Wild China, thanks very much for being on Danwei TV.
Thank you very much.